I'm Tass Mellis of The Starters.
This is Ben Golliver with the Open Floor Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ludlow from NBA Inside Stuff.
I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors.
Hey, I'm Elena Donan, and welcome to the Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch
Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Double Clutch NBA podcast. My name is Matthew Wellington and I'm joined tonight once again by my usual sidekick. He's got his shoes on this time, even though it is the finals. We've got Mike Miller.
I've got no shoes on, nor socks.
No shoe Miller's back. Oh, no sock Miller's back.
Yeah, summertime Miller's back.
I thought you'd been buying plenty of Stan socks.
Yeah, but it's too warm for Stan socks. I did go out for running them though, and they are super comfy. Plug.
Oh, nice. And coming to us from the border. I don't know if he's actually at the border. Is Hugh Hopkins?
I'm never at the border. How many times do we have to go through this?
Which border?
I live in Coventry. Like it's the very centre of England.
To be fair though, it should have a border around it.
Oh God, yeah. The diseases in this place.
Is Coventry that bad? I mean, I lived in Northampton while I was at uni, and that was.
To be fair, before I go getting a reputation, I don't actually live in Coventry. I live in Kenilworth, which is quite a nice place outside Coventry. No offense to our great fan base in Coventry that are listening.
Oh dear. Right. Well, we've actually got a little apology to make. Mike went on holiday last week, so it kind of bamboozled the entire flow of the regular Double Clutch podcast schedule. But we did, myself and Hugh and Sean, absolutely overload the website over the past week, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm tired.
And Josh did a Liz Cabbage through Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was a bit weird, but we liked it. We like more weird stuff. Weird stuff's good.
Yeah, it was good WNBA content. I think we had a WNBA podcast last week as well, didn't we?
Yes,
we did.
Yeah, Cheryl Reeve went up last week, yeah.
Can I just apologise for my absence then? Because, there was Jurassic Parks sort of springing up all over Canada, and I decided to go to the Jurassic Coast, which ironically has prehistoric download speeds and meant that I couldn't get on anything at all. So, yeah, thanks for that, Dorset. It was a great one. That's my apology done.
Yeah, like you were in the UK and you still couldn't get a decent download speed. Surprise.
Well, to be fair, it was basically a caravan site.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So the website's been pretty busy the last week. We've had all kinds of bits and bobs. We were very Raptors heavy at one stage, which I'm going to take fault for, but luckily Sean and Hugh bailed us out with some bits and bobs on the Golden State Warriors and whether we should be worried about them, and DeMarcus Cousins having a couple of good games. Ironically enough, he went and had a terrible game after you wrote that, but he seemed to he picked it up again last night. So
DC curse strikes again.
And Sean's done a piece. Mr. Guest is back with us. He's done a piece on remembering the 2009 Orlando Magic, who kind of, were the original 3-point shooting crazy team.
It was, I think the piece landed on the same day 10 years later. The Orlando Magic actually won their first ever finals game, so it was really nice timing. But it was a really in-depth piece. I really enjoyed it. It's nice to have Sean back on the roster. We've missed him.
Yes,
definitely missed Sean.
He does go to town on things. But we are here to recap the NBA Finals. Obviously, we've not actually done a show since you two did the Finals preview pod, which was a week and a bit ago now.
Yeah,
I think
sounds about right.
Recorded in a car park. Dedication.
Actually, you were in a car park again, weren't you?
No, I was at home. I don't know who you're accusing of being in a car park this time.
Well, Mike might have been in the office or something.
Yeah, I was in a conference room.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Oh yeah, it was that lunchtime recording session, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was an experience.
Just before we move on, actually, really quickly, I want to shout out Oliver, who's joined us recently. He's one of the editors over at the 405, and he's come in, and his video stuff is just awesome. So really if you see any of our cool videos, like Cody's head being mapped to John Wick laughing, which is really cool because that went up on ours, and then TNT did their own version about a minute later. So clearly we're on the same wavelength, or at least Oliver's on the same wavelength. So we appreciate you.
And also, guys, if you're into music and stuff and culture, the 405 is a really good website. So yeah, it's worth checking out the site that actually pays him as well. So yeah.
Stop plugging everybody else.
The site that actually pays him.
Who are we going to be plugging next? Sky Sports that you also write for?
Well, I mean, I did have a piece up there last week, so.
Brilliant. Right. Game 5 took place this morning. We're recording this. What is it? 9 o'clock on Tuesday the 11th. I nearly said Wednesday then. Gets a bit confusing when you've spent all day with airplane mode on your phone. But yeah, game 5 took place last night. It was almost like a big party for the Raptors fans. They were all ready and waiting for their celebration, but the Warriors staved off elimination, winning the game by a single point in Canada. And now the finals will head back to Oakland for game 6, which I believe is Thursday night US time. And that's 2 o'clock on Friday morning for us. So
that is correct.
It did sort of feel like everybody was ready to crown the Raptors, and I think the Golden State Warriors, they probably took a little bit of umbrage with that, don't you think?
Absolutely. I'd started prepping for this pod yesterday, and I'd written a load of stuff like about the Raptors winning, basically, and more or less along the lines of Matt's gloat show, because he was one of the only two people to pick them to win the series at the start.
Yeah, I'm going to stay off the gloat show because I predicted 6, so we could still get 6, which would be amazing. And I'd earned some money because I'd put a cheeky couple of bets on Sky Bet, as I showed you guys earlier in our Slack tap. But yeah, no, it was a great game. It was a fantastic basketball game to watch. I watched it at lunch and I had my headphones in at work, and nobody at work understands basketball. So there's me like throwing my arms up in the air in celebration at certain moments and sort of crying at others. So that kind of showed you had the whirlwind of events that you get in, the highest quality basketball games. And like I saw something earlier that said that these finals have been disappointing, but I don't understand where that's coming from. But last night, I guess the biggest disappointment was the fact that KD returned, was going to play hero for his team, came out balling, despite the fact he was bricking shots during his warm-ups, and then it ended up going down after just 12 minutes in what was his first game in just over a month. Not great signs. There's been all kinds of stuff today about Raptors fans cheering the injury, which is 50% correct. They were cheering it initially, and then I think they realised what the hell had happened, and Kyle Lowry and Serge Ibaka and Danny Green in particular were sort of telling them to find their moral ground.
I don't think we can let them off the hook. I mean, the instant reaction was cheering. Like it's like when I'm going to try and do a football analogy now. This is going to go terribly because I know football like I know sewing, and I think it's like when you see someone score a penalty, or at least you think it scored a penalty, but then I'm just going to bail on this one, guys. This is horrible.
I thought it was pretty horrific that they decided to cheer at that point. Fair play to the Raptors players for stopping it. And I'm guessing it was only a minority that were cheering, although it sounded pretty
and they managed
big.
To turn
I didn't even notice
it
on the broadcast, to be honest.
Did you not?
Did you not?
That's the first thing I noticed.
They managed to turn it around,
I noticed them yelling KD or cheering KD when he was being carried off by Curry and Iggy.
Yeah, the players on the court managed to, I guess, turn it around, and they were actually cheering Durant's name as he was going through the tunnel there. But I just thought the instant gut reaction of your joy seeing someone, crippled, sort of going through what must be a pretty horrific experience. I'm not lucky enough to have experienced anything like it in my life, but that must just be terrible. I mean, we've all seen the video, the slow motion video of where you can see the very bottom of his foot pop, and then it ripples all the way up his leg, and that's for sure something disgusting to do with your Achilles. And I just can't imagine the pain that must have shot through his leg at that point. So for someone to cheer for that's just cold. I'm not on board with that.
Yeah, same. I tried to stay off the pessimistic approach on it until I saw that replay of the slow-mo up close and large, and when I got it, I just made sure I played it on the biggest screen I had available, and I watched it, and I was like, okay,
did you want to puke?
Yeah. Well, it was because the whole thing with this calf in the first place, which they're calling it an Achilles tear, and they called it a tear before, and then someone had to explain that a tear is depending on the severity of it, is just a strain, but at the other end of the spectrum, it is a rupture. So when they said tear, I was like, oh, okay, he's probably just sprained it again, because Kerr was saying in the pre-game scrums, he was like, he's been cleared to play. I've been assured that there's no risk of doing further damage, that, he could aggravate it, but not actually worsen the injury. And then I was like, okay, well, he's had sound medical advice. They've cleared him. They're not idiots. And then I watched the replay and went, literally, oh snap. It was just, it's just horrific. And if that is a ruptured Achilles, he's got a hell of a mountain to climb to get back to, if he can, this version of KD that we've seen, which is just, one of the top 2 players in the league.
Yeah, and such a massive, off-season coming up for him. Like, the whole postseason really has been the Kevin Durant show. Like, he was phenomenal in that series against the Clippers, and then he goes down against the Rockets and he disappears, and Kawhi takes over the spectrum of, the best player on the planet role for a while. And then KD comes back in this game, and they looked a totally different team with him on the court, which is really obvious. But, you bring the best player in the world back and it's obviously going to make a difference. But the risk was always there, I guess. And Bob Myers was really emotional after the game. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's quite difficult to watch, actually. Like, I've got no affiliation to the Warriors whatsoever, and I've been rooting for the Raptors for the whole series, but like, he was quite visibly distraught and placing the blame on himself, even though the blame probably doesn't go on himself. Rachel Nichols was saying that she'd spoken to Steve Kerr, and Steve Kerr was just leaving the arena mouthing, we were told it couldn't get any worse, and this has happened. And, I think Dwayne Wade as well summed it up. He was saying that this guy's gone out there on the biggest stage to go and help out his teammates, and this has happened. And it's like, there's probably going to be some neutrals out there who are now swinging towards supporting the Warriors in this series just because of what the Raptors fans, or some of the Raptors fans, were doing in the moment that happened. But Canadian sports fans in general are odd, because like Steph Curry was asked about it in his presser, and he grew up in Toronto, like he lived there for a while, and he was saying that he just didn't. It's not normal for people of Toronto and Canada to be like that. He's like, they love life. They're really welcoming people. Like, they understand the hardships that people go through, because you've got all these different ethnic races and minorities and stuff in Toronto especially, and they're used to just sort of getting through things like that. And I think it was more, that's your sports fan. They were so upset. The whole night was basically a championship crowning in waiting. And that one split second of him getting injured just amplified the situation to the point where probably 20,000 people in that arena had instantly thought, well, this is it, we're going to win this game. Because it's been obvious throughout most of this series that when Durant isn't on the court, or hasn't been on the court, that the Raptors are, or have been, they think they've been the better team for like 13 of the quarters or something so far. So it sort of feels it's difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you. It sort of feels like the past 24 hours, well, not even that, but the allegiance has sort of switched a bit. I mean, I saw a like when they have those political maps of like what states voted red or blue or whatever, and they sort of showed a similar one of like what states, they did polls in each state and figured out who was going to be supporting the Warriors and who's going to be supporting the Raptors, and in something ridiculous like 40 of the states or whatever, they were going to be supporting the Raptors, even though obviously they're not even American. And I would be interested to see that now, to see how much that has flipped, because it felt like the whole world turned on the Raptors because of those fans in that arena and how they reacted. I'd be interested to see some figures like that, because a few weeks ago everybody was just like, oh, someone take down the Warriors, please. But now they're so injured and so hobbled, and their backs are against the wall. They're obviously down in a 3-2 hole. It seems like, maybe we need to start supporting for our guys again, or at least it's certainly some of the feeling I've been getting from at least American USA NBA Twitter, at least.
the next thing I'm going to say is probably going to sound quite callous. But before I do it, I just want to gauge both of you, percentage-wise, before this injury, how likely did you think it was that KD was leaving the Warriors for anyone else this summer, percentage-wise?
75%.
Yeah, Hugh?
I've actually been on record on a couple of different places. If I was a betting man, I possibly would have put a little bit of money on him returning next season.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm 50-50, basically.
I think you're in the minority with that choice. But
yeah, I agree.
This entire situation that's manifested, isn't this, and I'm going silver lining view here for the Warriors, isn't this the ideal situation for them to retain him going forwards? Because here we've got a guy, you'd think now he has to opt into his player option for next season at 31.5 mil, because historically, Achilles injuries have not gone well for players returning. Certainly not the first year after the injury. Certainly not the second year even. You know, you've got DeMarcus Cousins and ironically another Warrior, Jonas Jerebko, the guys who have come back from it. Wes Matthews, Rudy Gay, all these kind of guys in recent years who've come back from ruptured Achilles. If it is that, if he opts in, they've got him for another year to put him through the best kind of recovery possible. You've already got Bob Myers sort of showing such emotion, and I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that wasn't genuine, but he's obviously out there showing, this hurts us. He is part of the family. Whatever's gone on in the past where might have chided him to some degree. Now they've got a year to reset everything, bring him back into the fold, and then look to re-sign him next year. So from a Warriors perspective, as gutting as this is, irrespective of the outcome of the series, this is perhaps their best chance of retaining him as a Warrior going forwards, in my opinion.
I don't necessarily agree, because let's say he opts in, right? He's going to sit. He's going to sit on the bench all year. He's not even going to be sitting on the bench. He's going to be doing rehab. He's going to be away from the team. Everybody's going to sort of forget about him. Look how much, I know it's a slightly different situation, but look at Kawhi last year, right? Look how low the package was in terms of what teams could get back for him. That's because a lot of people thought, what can he even offer? Everybody thought he was a bit injured. Everybody wasn't sure about what was going on with his uncle Dennis, and nobody really knew what to expect. So they were throwing very low ball offers. If he opts in and just sits out for a year, just collects another ring at the end of next season or whatever, I think his value will diminish. However, if he goes out onto the open market now, he's in everybody's eyesight at the moment. Even though he's injured, everyone knows it's Kevin Durant, right? The Knicks are still going to offer him the max. Even the Lakers might offer him the max. The Clippers will offer him the max.
You think he's going to get max contract offers coming off an injury where no player has played to the same degree again? There are case studies. I think there have been 19 players. No, over the last 19 years, there have been like 12 players who have had it or something. None of them reached their pre-injury levels again. If Durant's not not this version of Durant, is he worth a max?
How many tickets do you think that team will sell when he is back?
Not many if he's sat on the bench.
But the following season,
the Knicks don't need him to sell tickets. They sell out anyway. People turn up to games with bags on their heads.
They might not. They might not, but I guarantee you their season ticket sales will see an increase with a player like Kevin Durant on the roster. On the roster sheet, regardless of whether he's in street clothes or not. It's these elite players that will build your marketing campaign. He'll still be on the posters. He'll still be in the jerseys, and who knows, the team that signs him might say, well, we've had our medical guys have a look at it, and we think he might be back before the end of the season. And then it's like, well, yeah, you better get your season tickets now, because they're going to sell out later in the season. It doesn't. I'm
not convinced the marketing team and the GM have aligned goals.
But perhaps not. But in a year's time, yes, we'll have a conversation where we're like, oh yeah, we're a bit worried. Do you think he's going to be coming back to the same form that he left in? But realistically, the marketing around that sort of thing, that they will more than make up the money that they spend. And yeah, their salary cap will take a hit, but for teams that have been, especially these bottom feeding teams that have been doing nothing for years, that they're going to be happy to have a player like him eating up the cap. And also they can probably, I don't know the full details, but I'm pretty sure with injured players you're allowed a disability
not when they're signed. Not when you can't sign them and then claim the disability. They've got to be injured whilst an active player.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. But even so, I don't think it'll put off teams like the Knicks. Maybe maybe the Clippers. The Clippers are obviously a slightly better run organization, but there are a lot of badly run organizations that will be more than happy to sign up to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think in the space of about a minute, the whole summer changed because Durant was going to dictate where a lot of other players, because there's a big free agency class coming up as well, that dictates where a lot of them are going to go. And like I get Mike's point, and I think it's valid. I think that you have to look at DeMarcus Cousins last year. He had a pretty great season with Anthony Davis in New Orleans, and he was ready for a big contract and a big deal, and he suffered his Achilles tear, and that was it. The best you could get was a $5 million 1 year deal from this Golden State team, and I think Durant now will look at his situation.
That probably wasn't the best he could get, though. I mean, there were reports that he was offered more than that from several other teams, including the Pelicans. But because they were lower than the max that he wanted, he then decided to go for a ring chase, and that was a slightly different situation because I think he could have also his personality pissed off a lot of people, and I think people were more concerned about his personality than they were about his ability to play. And in terms of the ability to play, Durant, he does have a lighter frame than some of the big guys who are massively hampered. That being said, he is still 7 foot, and you look at people like Kristaps Porzingis, who might have similar issues with his feet, because this isn't the first time Kevin Durant has gone down with a bad foot. He missed a chunk of games a few years ago, so I think there will be concerns. He's getting the other side of 30 now. He's gonna struggle to get back to the form he was simply because of age as much as the Achilles. But I still think this, in the same way that teams were quite happy to offer Chris Paul a max deal last year when he clearly can't play a full season, I think that they'd offer Kevin Durant the same thing.
I think his closest comparison in terms of body type for this kind of injury has to be Rudy Gay.
Yeah, but even Rudy was heftier. He's a bigger guy. But yeah.
I think there's another angle you look at this as well, and that's why I was drawing the Boogie comparison. It's the financial implications of this deal for Kevin Durant. Durant this summer, most of us were banking on it. Mike just asked me then, 75% of the opportunity chance was that he was going to New York. If he's going to New York, it's not a basketball decision. You're not going to a better basketball team in New York. You're going to an organization that has consistently not done very well over the past 2 decades. The 90s was the last time the New York Knicks were a relevant basketball team.
We get the 2011 Melo fans coming out at us.
yeah, but he was on the course for a 5-year supermax with the Warriors, which is $220 million for him. Now he's down to a year. I think he has to take the year and just you're in the situation you've got teammates who, despite the bickering at the start of the year between Draymond Green and whatever, they do appreciate him, and they appreciate him a lot. They went out, Draymond was the guy who went out and got him to join them in the first place. With him, they have become certainly the best basketball team I've ever seen in my 20 years watching the game or whatever, and probably one of the best ones that you guys have seen as well. But I think it's the financial implications of this are massive. Coming up to the age he is and the situation he was in, there was no basketball decision he was going to take this summer that was going to take him away from Golden State. If it's purely a financial, he's looking beyond his game time situation, this final sort of this big contract that was coming up, and that's now been taken away from him almost. Whereas Boogie was a little bit different because Boogie's 28, so he's 27, 26 when he injured his Achilles. It's a little bit different for him. Boogie was always looking for a place to sort of justify himself, and him getting the ability to earn himself a decent sized contract after that year with the Pelicans was also taken away from him. And they are different circumstances, but the financial implications, I think, are the biggest driving factor that a lot of people are probably going to be talking about when it comes to Durant's injury the other night. But
taking it in a slightly different path, what do you make of Boogie's chances of getting a decent deal this summer?
After his performances this finals?
Not great. Not great. I'd go with that. I don't think he's any. Well, look, and this is one of the things I was trying to say with the Achilles thing. It takes a good couple of years to get back to a decent level, and he had a quarter of a season back, and then he tore his quad, and now he's back from that, and it's just, the injuries don't look good, and then. If we look at the last sort of the final quarter of last night's game, there were 3 key errors from Boogie that cost them 6 points.
He played traitor for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, so there was the offensive goaltend, which, to be fair to him, was a close call. There was the defensive goaltend, and then there was
the moving screen,
the offensive screen where he hip checked Van Vliet.
Which was just obvious as anything.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, but come on, they never call that. They never call it. I can't believe
they do when you stick your ass out.
Yeah,
They've already called it twice earlier in the game. It's like you can step and turn and it, but if you're literally just sticking your butt out and trying to twerk on the dude,
come on,
then
Marc Gasol did that all night. That's how big guys set screens. Is they make themselves.
Yeah, but he's big enough to not have to stick his hip out.
Gasol just looks clumsy as well.
I thought he actually played a hell of a game. I mean,
yeah, he was the boost they needed when Durant went down.
He is not good on defense. I mean, the amount of times that Kyle Lowry made him look like an idiot.
Oh my gosh!
I
with
lost
just
count.
Fundamental jump stop.
Yeah,
shaking
exactly.
that fat ass.
And it was embarrassing for him. But aside from his defensive deficiencies. And it's already going to be maximized for a team like the Warriors, who will switch everything. So, basically, if you are 7 foot, what is he, 7'1", and the dude is huge. He's not exactly he's
6'11", isn't he?
Well, regardless, but he's got a lot of weight on him. He's hefty as well, isn't he? He's not a lithe. He's not Kevin Durant, who's the same height, but there's nothing on him.
Durant claims he's taller.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you see them standing next to each other, Cousins is not the same height as Durant. Durant towers over him, but apparently they're both 6'11".
Durant definitely got falsely listed on Combine Day.
Well, didn't he say that he tells some people, he tells the ladies he's under 6 foot? And is 6'11" because they like it, but he tells other people he's 7 foot, and I don't know. It's I'm sure that was on one of the Bill Simmons podcasts over the years.
That's probably not relevant for you guys, but that's like me with my Tinder bio. I'm 5'11", but if I put 6 foot, it makes a difference. You see, let's be honest. No girls turn up to a date with a tape measure.
No, be honest now, Matt. Are you really
you're
5'11"?
Not even 5'11".
It's nice of you to play along.
That's harsh, man. I'm
you're only 5'4", aren't you?
I feel like a midget standing next to you guys anyway.
Oh dear.
Killed it right there.
Yeah, so Cousins, I get that. Yeah, he was. It was weird how they didn't even go to him to start with. If that makes sense, they went to Bogut and Looney first, and then when he finally did get on, he channeled his frustrations the correct way, and you could see he was not happy about his role whilst he was sat on the bench before subbing in, and he did channel it the right way. To be fair to him, but those 3 in a key stretch of the game, I sat there just going, well, if they lose this now, I'm going to point the finger at him, because everything he'd done for me was undone in that 5-minute swing.
Yeah, it was a strange game. I mean, Durant went down, and for the next 3 or 4 minutes, it seemed like both teams couldn't really work out what was going on. They couldn't find any form of rhythm. DeMarcus Cousins came on. He was 6 of 8 from the field for 6 rebounds in 20 minutes, like 14 points. It was good, but then towards the end, it just all collapsed, and you had a series of, like, if you go through the final 5.5 minutes from that point where Kawhi Leonard grabbed that rebound to where he made the 3-point shot and went on that tear, you thought that was it. The game was changing there, and it was almost like, and you guys probably have more point drawing this comparison than me, but like I'm too young to have seen Michael Jordan play live.
I'll get over this.
But that's how I would have imagined it would have been like watching MJ taking over in a finals game for that sort of 10 when he went on that 10-point stretch.
I think the comparisons between Jordan and he, that they are warranted. Like, obviously the list of achievements is not in comparison at all.
No,
but just his pacing, the way that he just doesn't go at anyone else's speed. You know, he knows how he's going to score, and he will just score, and he knows when he needs to pass, and he will get the pass. And if he wants to go and get that rebound, well, Boardman gets paid. You know, he's gonna get the rebound if he wants it. I think they are warranted, but yeah, that 2-minute stretch. I've heard a lot of like podcasts and read a lot of articles that suggest that the way that he plays, where he sort of takes his time over the first 3 quarters, sometimes 2.5 quarters, sometimes 3.5 quarters, depending on the situation. He does have a great ability to be able to get his teammates involved and that sort of thing, and that shows on the court. You know, you'll be going into the end of a third quarter, and he might only have, like, I don't know, 8 points or something, but he will have eight rebounds and then, you know, half a dozen assists, and then he'll just go off and score 12, 14, 16 points in the final quarter and will the team to victory. It's ridiculous the level that he's playing at, and I think we know that it's Greg Popovich he has to thank.
Well, he was having a quiet game, because you go back and you look at game 4 on the road in Oracle. He finished that one with a career high 36 points, 12 rebounds. That was like the peak, like, transcendent Kawhi Leonard game. And then you go to last night, and you're at that period where there's 5:20 left on the clock. Raptors are down by 2. He grabs a rebound, goes up the other end, hits the 3. First lead the Raptors have had in what seems like the whole night. Curry then runs up the other end of the floor and throws up a contested 3, which was just a bad shot in my opinion. Gasol grabs a rebound, back up the other end again. Leonard, another 3. And from that point on, it just felt like the whole moment was changing. It felt like the Raptors were a step away, and then Nick Nurse calls that timeout, and Kawhi sort of turned around and was like, what was going, like, Kawhi looked a bit annoyed. I think he held his composure quite well, especially in post game when he was asked about it, because he looked quite annoyed about it.
Have you ever seen an uncomposed Kawhi?
No, true.
I was going to say, I don't think the default settings allow for that.
No, default settings.
I think you do have to get
hard drive
you do have to get an upgrade to get emotion. So
yeah,
it's not quite got that yet. But I think what you're saying is right. He was building up momentum, and he was going off all by himself on his own little tear for 2 minutes. But going back to what I was saying, like, look at the points that were scored across the board for the team. Yeah, you had Kawhi Leonard, who finished with 26. It might not be his greatest scoring output, but you had Pascal scoring 12, which wasn't great for him, but you had Gasol scoring 17, Lowry with 18, Ibaka with a good 15, Van Vliet with 11, and a couple of other points thrown in here and there from a few others. That is a well-orchestrated, well-balanced attack. And if you've got the whole team going off like they were for the majority of that game, then you don't need Kawhi Leonard to to keep the scoreboard ticking over. It's when they're struggling, that's when he steps up. I don't think he had a bad game at all last night. He just knows how to dictate the pace of the game, and he knows how to insert himself into situations when he is needed.
That's hitting the nail on the head for me. That is, because it is a situational awareness. And one of the things that Jordan, who I can remember playing, was chastised about for a long time was his inability to make teammates better. His otherworldly talents that no one could match up to still weren't enough for him to drag a team over the line on his own. He had to learn to get everyone else involved. A lot of the time, the triangle offense, which is much lauded. That's not even the right word I'm looking for. It's much maligned offense in the current NBA. Even though I think it's actually a lot of it is very useful, and in fact, a lot of it you can still see existing in the Warriors sets.
Oh God, yeah.
Like for me, the whole they use the system, they get everyone involved, and then when they needed to, the situational awareness that Michael had, because we're first name terms, me and him, would enable him to take over, and he was ruthless enough to just be able to flip that switch and sense the moment. And we see Kawhi doing that. I'm not saying that Kawhi is in the same sphere and on the same plateau as Jordan. What I'm saying is the way he takes over the game, the way he senses what his team needs is Jordan-esque. Like you say, he didn't need to step up until he sensed that run. And he had those 10, I think it was a 10-2 run that was 10 points just from him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other games we've seen, like in the Philly series, where the rest of the team completely shrank and couldn't play, and he went, well, I guess it's on me then, and went and dropped 45 or something like that. He can sense when his team needs him to just flip that switch.
And he does have a great team around him as well. Like, he doesn't always need to do that. I mean, I remember when I was talking to you, Mike, a few months ago, and I was recording it in a car park. It was around mid-season, I think, just after the All-Star break, because they just got Marc Gasol, and everybody was talking about Giannis and the Bucks and how brilliantly they were doing, and they were. But I remember us both saying, "Yeah, but watch out for Toronto, because that roster that they have is incredible." And that's not. I know we sort of made fun of a little bit in BBL circles and British circles on occasions, because on times he obviously, Nick Nurse, he had a fantastic career over here and won like 5 championships in 4 years or something in the BBL, but equally he also may have upset a few people along the way. I'll just leave it at that. But he has been a great coach this year. He clearly knows how to coach a team to a championship level on the biggest stage, and I think the composure of the team as a whole, he's got them in a great situation. And if they can re-sign Kawhi, hell, they could be a force to be reckoned with for a few seasons.
Yeah, the roster's stacked, and I wrote about it after Game 4. When it was a case of strength in numbers, like it was the Warriors slogan for so long, it's been flipped in this situation where, and we saw it again last night when Durant went off. The Warriors struggle for offense. Yes, you can kind of bank on Steph and Clay getting you points because they're two of the greatest shooters of all time, and probably the most prolific like backcourt of all time in the finals at least. But they had to rely on someone like Quinn Cook to get them offense, and that's why they were. Right at the end of the game, what do? Do you take Iggy out and lose the defense, sort of the defensive mentality you get from him, or do you bring in Quinn Cook to see if you can get a little, someone who can create his own shot and give you a bit more on the offensive end? Steve Kerr was balancing that, but I think the whole stuff that we were mentioning just briefly now about Nick Nurse and the timeout, I think the fact that people are tearing into pieces is stupid. Like, I think he nailed it on the head, actually. If they'd have won that game, no one would have been talking about that timeout.
100%.
It just came in a really awkward spot. I mean, it was a 10-2 run. Nurse has said that they needed rest. Yeah, fair enough. And they did have, I think they had 3 or 4 timeouts left, so they were going to lose 2 anyway.
Yeah.
So he took that, which, and if they'd have won the game, no one would have given a damn about it. But I guess it just looks bad because the Warriors scored 9 points, the Raptors scored 2 points after the timeout, The Warriors went 3 for 3 from downtown. The Raptors missed everything they took. It went the opposite direction. But it's much ado about nothing.
Can we clarify that whole sequence of events though? Because it sort of felt, maybe I'll need to watch it back in live, in terms of the full section of that game. But it felt like there was a timeout called, and I thought it was Toronto that called it. But then we came back from an advertising break, and I think it's Mike Breen who was on the call. Is it Mike Breen on the call?
On the ABC call, yeah.
Yeah, and he said the Toronto Raptors have called another timeout, so we're going to go back to...
They took 2.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think if he had taken 1... that's fine. You've got a bit of time to compose your team and figure out what your next plan is.
What difference does it make then? What's the difference between calling 1 or 2?
Because
the NBA timeouts, they still take like 2 minutes.
They take longer than that, and that's the point. Is you get a team that is really building momentum. We've all spoken about how Kawhi was taking over and the team was firing on all cylinders. So then you sit them down for, let's be honest, it is 3 minutes usually. By the time they've by the time they've gone to commercial break, come back, and then they're usually still sitting there, and then they'll walk out onto the court slowly. It's usually around 3 minutes or more, and there tends to be no rush. And then they went for another 3 minutes back to back, as in they didn't even step back out onto the court. That just takes the crowd out of it. It takes it takes their spirit away from them.
Let's just flip it a sec then. So let's say he didn't take that timeout, and he only went 9 deep in the game. Let's call it 8 because Patrick McCaw played 128. The Warriors went 12 deep, and you can scrap Bogut and McKinney if you want, because both of them played over 2 minutes. If they hadn't called that timeout and then they'd lost their legs at the end because they were knackered, would we then be chastising him because he didn't use his timeout?
Perhaps we would have, but I think I just
think it's unfair to shove it under a microcosm and say you lost by a point and this was the specific issue.
I just think, do you need 6-7 minutes to catch your breath? I don't think so. I think you need 2, maximum 3 minutes to catch your breath, and then any time after that, you just. I like I said, I need to check it, but I think it was back-to-back timeouts. And I don't think he needed to take back-to-back timeouts.
It was definitely back-to-back timeouts, but I think that we're placing a lot of emphasis on that moment purely because the Raptors lost. The Raptors lost that game last night because Draymond Green is one of the best players to ever play on a defensive side of basketball. Yeah. He was. You break down that final play where Fred VanVleet's bringing it up the court. They give it to Kawhi. Kawhi's at the top of the key. He's trying to get something going, and after the game, he was asked about it. What was the play? And he said there wasn't a play. We went with it. And that's a bit odd considering the situation. But that's been the one worry for the Raptors all season long, is when it gets to the clutch situations. I know Kawhi is going to be reliable, but who else do I go to in that situation? Do I go to Kyle Lowry? Can I go to Pascal Siakam? Can I go to Fred VanVleet? There isn't that second guy to step up. And you look at that play and you break it down. Draymond's got Gasol on him, right? He's under the basket. Gasol's doing a really good job holding him there. Draymond somehow gets around him and goes around his left-hand side, which means he avoids going the baseline. Kyle Lowry is a right-handed shooter, so that immediately means Draymond is then attacking his best shooting hand.
Yeah.
And he got a touch on it. And the stick that Kyle Lowry is getting online today is quite frankly ridiculous. Draymond Green got round there in what is an unbelievable defensive act of brilliance and contested the shot in the best possible way you could have contested the shot against Kyle Lowry in that situation. And yeah, it's a moment of defensive brilliance from a player who has done that for the last 5-6 years. We're used to it, but you can go back a little bit further as well. The start of that play, Livingston comes up with Clay to double team and trap Kawhi. Kawhi probably at that point, they probably should have had a timeout. The Raptors had a timeout left. They could have used it. They didn't use it. Clay got on the high side of Leonard, and at that point, it was basically on top of him. Stopped him from getting to his spot. Couldn't do anything, and forced the Raptors to reset the play further back from where they originally wanted to set that play. So that final play there is, everything that's great about basketball on one side, but everything that's also bad on the other, because there wasn't the communication between the coach and his players on the court there.
I don't know. I thought it was great team defense. I think the reason the Warriors,
it was great. I'm not that. I just it's a phenomenal defensive play, but that's the reason that the Raptors lost the game, not because Nick Nurse used 2 timeouts.
But I also think Steve Kerr did an excellent coaching job in those final 2.5, 3 minutes, because, like you said, he was swapping in offense for defense at every opportunity.
He had to.
He realized that he needed to take out Boogie Cousins for that final play, even though Boogie Cousins was part of the reason that they were in the game at all. He wasn't afraid to make those big decisions. And yeah, there was a lack of communication, but I think we've also seen, especially from a team like Golden State, over the years, Steve Kerr has been quite happy not to call a timeout and set a specific play. That has won them games, because the team on the defensive end is expecting you to call a timeout. So they're getting ready to sort of relax and then set up a defense. But if you just let the play go and you get the ball into the hands of your best player, which it was for a good chunk of that play, you can usually create something out of that. To be honest, I can't remember who he first passed it to. I think it might have been no, it wasn't Gasol. Might have been Siakam. It was on the top on the left-hand wing before the ball got passed onto Kyle Lowry in the corner. But he sort of had a bit of an open opportunity there, and I think if that first pass had gone straight to be an assist for an easier basket, that could have won them the game. I think, there were some bad decisions on the floor, but I think they had the opportunities, and he even got a shot off. But like you said, it was a brilliant defensive play. You just got to shake their hand and say, nice work.
Kawhi made the right play there. He got the ball to Kyle Lowry, who was wide open in the corner, and it was just, like I just said, it was Draymond just being Draymond. Marc Gasol could have probably done a little bit of a better job sort of standing him up underneath the post, but Draymond Green is a lot quicker than Marc Gasol, just in case a lot of people haven't noticed, but that was never going to be a fair contest. But it just winds me up, the stick I see Kyle Lowry getting today. He took the shot, it got blocked. There's not much else you can do, guys, unfortunately. But the Raptors, again, they could have taken a timeout. They didn't. In that situation, I think they probably should have called up a play. They had plenty of time. It sort of felt like the whole last 5 minutes of the game was a little bit rushed from both teams' perspectives, actually. But yeah, I mean, it was great coaching from both coaches all night, which is why, again, I think it's really unfair to sort of nail Nick Nurse to the post just because he took a timeout that may or may not have dented the Raptors' momentum. I mean, it was Kawhi's momentum. It wasn't the Raptors' momentum. It was just Kawhi who'd scored before that. Nobody else was scoring before that, so they might have needed a rest.
Just to go back and just clarify what I said earlier, I think the ball was off the Kawhi got the double team. So it was Clay and Iggy went over to double team, and then the ball was passed to Fred Van Vliet, and then he actually got a step on Sean Livingston, who stepped up to defend him. Then Van Vliet passed the ball to Kyle Lowry in the corner, but realistically, I think Van Vliet could have actually got a decent drive, and then maybe kicked out to draw in some extra. I mean, we're arguing over little semantics. It's just
I'm watching it at the same time. That's why I've gone a bit quiet. But when he drives in, Iggy's already recovered to block that drive, and Steph has stepped up. So I don't think he had much choice. Yeah, I'm surprised actually, given the amount of Billy big ball shots he's hit this series and this, that he didn't pull up straight away on that.
Yeah,
but there's still too many seconds
Iggy just
left
sort
on
of
the
stands
clock.
there. You see him when Kawhi's got the ball. He's standing just under the basket, and he's clearly assessing the situation and wondering what's going on. He lets Kyle run. I think Kyle runs behind him on that play because he's not fussed about Kyle Lowry at that point. Like he's irrelevant. You're focused on Kawhi Leonard, the guy who's just torched you for like the last 10 minutes. So. Like everyone was making the right read in that situation. It just came down to a brilliant play from Draymond Green in the end. Yeah. we just picked apart a play for the first time ever on a podcast in quite a long while, I think.
I was going to say, it's definitely happened before, but
I was going to say, it might have been a while ago.
It might have been one with Joe on.
It was a close.
I think me
it was
and Joe
close,
had
man.
one a while ago where we just ended up picking plays back and forth, and it was possibly a really boring podcast because it just got very boringly technical. But I think this game ultimately, like going back to what you said earlier, Matt, I've heard from one or two people that this series has been kind of boring. I could not disagree more. I think this has been one of the best finals series we've had. Well, certainly since 2016, maybe. You know, it's
so 3 years.
Yeah,
but that's not a high bar. Best final in 3 years.
Well, yeah, I mean that Cavs Warriors series was pretty damn good.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It just doesn't sound great. Best series in 3 years. The 3-1 comeback. I don't know if it is as good as that though, because in every single game, pretty much the Warriors have been down by 10 or 15 and have never been able to recover. So I guess that's where they're coming from. There's never that. I mean, I sit there going, well, they're only down 15. It's the Warriors. They can come back.
Thing, like, on
and then you realise they've only got 2 scorers.
On every one of those games, though, I've genuinely felt like, well, I've had to watch it until the end. Yeah, there have been moments where they've been down 15, but they've also closed the gap and going into the fourth quarter down to 7 or 6 at certain occasions. And it's like, holy crap, this could be them mounting their comeback. So you have to stay tuned because it is. Yeah, it's not the 73 win Warriors, but it is still the Warriors. You know, you do still have people. I mean, look at what happened last night. They essentially went down. They were down by 6, and you had Clay, you had Steph on the floor. Those were the only 2 guys that could really score in those final few minutes. Yeah, they scored 3 after 3 after 3, and all of a sudden they were ahead by a couple of points. And that's why you had to stay glued to the game, to every single game, even if they were down by 6, 7, 8, 9 points, going into that final frame.
So guys, let's take a quick break to talk about our friends at NBAstore.eu. So where in the world can you find NBA jerseys for less than 65 quid?
Well, there is a place. It's NBAstore.eu, Europe's official NBA online store, and it has everything you need to rep for your team, and Double Clutch has partnered with them to bring you this amazing offer.
That's right, our listeners get 15% off all orders with the code DCPOD15. That's DCPOD15. Apply the code at checkout and get a £72 Swingman jersey for just £61.20.
So that's DC Pod 15, whatever you need, from the current Nike jerseys to hardwood classics to Stan socks and Spalding balls. NBAstore.eu has you covered like the areas of the court Steph Curry can score from. Offer excludes clearance and outlet items.
And they have a bunch of NBA Finals gear for you to show your support for either the Raptors or the Warriors or both.
And guys, once you get your gear, share it with us on social media at DoubleClutchUK and hashtag NBA in the UK.
So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to NBAstore.eu now and use your code DCPOD15 for all the good groovy stuff we just mentioned. Anyway, back to the podcast.
Booyah.
Can I just shout out that incredible Steph Curry 3 with the pin down? Like, it was just... That's everything that
you want to stay technical tonight, don't you?
He has become, the guy who's led the 3-point revolution in the NBA, and that was his moment. Everyone goes on about how he's always shied away at big moments in the finals, comes in, hits that 3,
which is
and then
good.
Klay Thompson,
Klay Thompson tied the game up with a 3 before, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, I think, and then he hit one to go in front just after, I seem to remember.
Yeah.
It was those 2 guys on the grandest stage doing what they do best, and I guess that's the point that you make about the Warriors may be down by 6 with a couple of minutes to go, but it's the Warriors. In this era, they've completely erased that being a thing. Like, every team now can come back from 6 points down quite quickly, depending on who's on the floor at the time and how big their balls are.
But what does it mean for the next game then? We've got a couple of days. What do you think? I mean, I think Kevin Looney, who's been an absolute warrior. Excuse the pun. I didn't actually mean that. He's been. and in some ways, he's been the best centre. I think I said it when we last spoke. I think he's been the best centre in the past few series because of what he brings. Yeah, he might not be scoring the same amount of points, but he's done so many of the little things that has helped the Warriors get to where they are. But he's not around anymore. I think they've ruled him out for the rest of the series.
He was another one that was told he couldn't injure it any worse and probably shouldn't be playing. But
I don't think he could. I think his injury, it was like you can't get any worse, but you're going to be in absolute agony. And he was. You could see in his face after every play, he was holding himself, but it wasn't going to get any worse. But that's what I mean when he was just.
And the free throws he tried to take
quite. Oh God, they were horrible.
When he first came up, he did not look comfortable at all.
No. So is there any chance for the Warriors then?
I think so. I think there's this has broken the door wide open. Psychologically, they've lost their best player. That should spur them on in that they need to prove that they are. He's gone now. Assuming this KD injury, I'm talking about KD, obviously, and not Looney.
Yeah.
Why
have they not had that mindset the whole series?
Because they're the Warriors. They needed a slap in the face, don't they? They've since they won the first chip, they've become this nonchalant. We can do this when we want. In the presses at the start, we don't care that we lost a game. We can do this. We just need to find ourselves. Well, back to the wall. About to lose. They pulled out a huge win on their opponent's floor. That psychologically, for them, it's got to be a case of our main guy's down. He put it all on the line for us, even though it could have and perhaps still might cost him his future career. Parts of it. I'm talking not saying he's never going to play again. Although 7 people who did tear their Achilles didn't ever make it back into the league.
Ouch.
Yeah. So. To me, they owe it to KD. It's the last game ever in the Roracle.
Confirmed now, whereas before it wasn't.
Yeah.
100% confirmed.
There is no more games at the Roracle. That is it. So they've got that going. All of it is just. It's just opened the door wide open for me again. The Raptors, can they recover from, you had this team on the ropes. You were up by 6, 7, 5 minutes to go. You were that close to bringing a chip to Toronto, to taking the Larry O'Brien north of the border, and you couldn't do it. You couldn't close it out. Now you've got to go and face them in their arena with their crowds chanting at you, and your crowd has probably incensed their crowd a little bit with the way they handled the KD thing. I think that there's a lot more emotion riding on this game. I think they've got a chance certainly to tie the series, and then if they've won 2 straight, the momentum's with them.
I can't see the Raptors losing 3 games in a row.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but
I can't. I barely struggle to see them lose 2 games in a row, and they've not done that often at all, especially this postseason run this season. But
last night before the game, I'd completely resigned myself to this is the Raptors title, and now
I didn't think
game.
I never thought it was over. I've been adamant that it was 6 since we did our season predictions. I think the Warriors are too good to lose anything less than to. They were always going to win at least 2 games in my eyes. Like whoever was on the court, that Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are too good to and then we saw it last night. That those 2 alone are the difference factor. You've got Steph coming up the court, pulls up to take that 3, and you're just sitting there going, he's going to make it, and he makes it, and then it's a different ball game. Whereas going back to the Oracle, I think the questions actually lie on the Raptors. Like, how do the Raptors win in the Oracle Arena now that all of these circumstances, like you're saying, are against them? Like, is there anything in particular they're going to have to do to? Because it's going to be a very different game from games 3 and 4. Sorry.
Yeah, but they have been able to do it. I don't think. I personally don't think
they're
the
not
Raptors
scared by the atmosphere. They're not scared by the Warriors anymore.
Exactly. I don't think the Raptors are going to have too much of a problem. I actually see this going. I reckon they could close it out on the road. The Warriors haven't won a game at home this series, have they? So
that's correct.
The Raptors have beaten them there 3 times this season already. Haven't they?
Exactly. Like I think what you saw in the first quarter of the game of Game 5.
Was Durant demolishing them?
Was
It
Durant.
wasn't just KD. KD, he went 3 for 3 from 3, 2 of 2 free throws, 0 for 2 on 2-point field goals. But they hit 5 straight threes between Durant, KD, and Steph.
Durant draws the attention.
They were locked in,
agree.
right? They were locked in, right? But what if Durant wasn't there? Those what was it, 5 or 6 shots? Those 11 points in total, they all had to go to someone else. Now, I'm not saying that would have been an issue then, right? Steph could have scored those points. Clay could have scored those points, but that would have been fine in the first quarter. But by the end of the third and the fourth quarter, we've seen it in the other games. They have been on their asses. They've been so tired because they have had to carry everything, because you're not getting any offense at the moment from Iggy. Iggy is going to need to step up massively. You can't rely on Boogie because he's got no lift. The dude cannot jump. And
That's very true.
And you now don't have Looney. And I'm sorry, I love Andrew Bogut, but God damn it, he's not doing anything either. Sean Livingston's knees are crumbling beneath him, and I just don't know where else you're going to get offensive power. The fact that look at the leading scorers, right? The leading scorers for the Warriors last night. Durant was the 4th leading scorer, and he nearly made it into the 2nd leading scorer because Boogie only scored 3 points more than him. The team just doesn't have that much to offer, and you need someone like a third scorer, right? You can have Clay and Curry being options number 1 and 2, but you do need a third option, especially going up against a very talented defensive team in Toronto. I don't know if those two alone have the offensive firepower to be able to carry an entire game.
Yeah, and what I think we've seen, especially the games that the Raptors have won, is that when they are making their shots, they have got all the offensive firepower they need to win the game quite comfortably. But it's that big Raptors question mark that we've gone on about for donkey's years on this podcast, and everybody else has. Can they do it? Like, can they keep their cool and calm? And with Kawhi there now, it seems that they have a sort of steadying force to stable the ship. I think if the Raptors are going to win Game 6 in Oracle, they have to push the pace. They had the advantage on fast break points last night, 13-3, and when they do that, it puts the Warriors in a difficult situation because there's a lot of length coming at them, and we've seen so many times, and we saw it in Game 4 in the Oracle, like the amount of sort of little sort of floater passes and backdoor cuts that you saw going to the likes of Serge Ibaka and Siakam and Gasol. It leads for easy baskets at the rim, and I think the Warriors are really going to struggle to contend with that, especially now Looney's out. Like you can't rely on DeMarcus Cousins, like he was saying. So they're going to have to figure out a way. It's the Raptors roll on one thing. If the Raptors have a good performance from Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, or Serge Ibaka, any 3 of them, if 2 of them are playing well, the Raptors will win. It's been that simple. And we've seen it all postseason. Like when those 2 have good games, they tend to win games. Of Marc Gasol, we saw it last night. Like he was a little bit timid and not quite there, and what a surprise they ended up losing the game. Like that's just in the way it's gone for them. But they're an immensely talented team up against a team that's really short-handed at the moment. But the short-handed team's got the 2 best players, the second, third best player in the series. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I want to see? And that would just be a brilliant redemption story for all the hate he's got since signing for him. Is I want KD to cast his mind back to the 1969-70 championship, which obviously you guys remember as well.
Yeah, like yesterday.
One of the key Knicks players missed Game 6 due to a severe thigh injury, which was a torn muscle.
What you think Kevin Durant is going to pull a Willis Reed?
I think Kevin Durant should pull a Willis Reed. I think he should turn up. He should surprise fans by walking out onto the court during warm-ups. He should start the game
on as well. Some Converse Chuck Taylors.
Can you imagine what that would do for not only the historical context of this series, but also just for from a PR perspective for brand Durant. who's come under scrutiny ever since signing in Golden State. Wouldn't that just be amazing?
Everyone's rallied around Durant now. It's amazing.
Exactly.
The way
this
his
is
story
turning
has switched in the space of a couple of hours.
Exactly. And just think this could just tip it over the edge, and everyone will be talking, in 30 years' time or 40 years' time, whatever it is, referring to him as someone who exemplified the very best that human spirit can offer. But that was a quote about Willis Reed.
A true warrior.
So, I just think that would be an amazing sort of turnout. I don't necessarily expect it to happen, but
I expect him to just do a Nurkic.
Yeah, walk without a cast with about 3 days
just
after.
Turn up, wave,
after someone had removed
do the
his
gladiator
leg.
wave or the Queen's wave or whatever it is you want to call it, and that was it. That was enough.
Oh man, it'd be good. I can't wait.
It is. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in Game 6. I mean, we know my predictions, but I'll take you two.
Well, I mean, at the start of the series, I think I put down Warriors in 6. I think I don't know. I think they've only got half a team. I think it's gonna end up being the Raptors, and the Raptors can close them out in the Oracle, which will be a sad demise for the Oracle and for the Warriors dynasty as it stands. But I think I think they're probably going to do it.
I had the Warriors in 6. I think it goes 7, and
Game 7's a toss-up.
Exactly. I wouldn't be surprised.
Never predict a Game 7.
And people. There's been some talk about whether there should be an asterisk and things like that. If it's, and I don't buy into that at all. Yeah, have you not heard all this?
That's bullshit though.
Yeah, I totally agree. The Raptors have played exactly who they've got, but there is part of me, which is when you were saying earlier about it being the best series in 3 years, there's part of me that's been a little disappointed that the narrative of the series has been injuries, and I hate that in any situation. I want teams to be at their best, so that we beat if you're going to dethrone someone, you take them while they're at their strongest. But I don't want to make excuses or detract from what the Raptors are doing.
I was going to say, you're not going to go all Drake on us, are you, and start crying on the sideline when a player from the opposite team starts limping off the court?
No, well, I might give you a shoulder rub.
Did you see him trying to fist bump Kawhi as Kawhi was making his way back into the game? Completely emotionless Kawhi just walks past him.
He does not fist bump, does he? He's not a fan of that.
What I don't get is if he's that much of a Raptors fan, why is he not sat there wearing a Raptors jersey?
Well, he is sometimes.
He had his Raptors jersey on in game 1.
Well, I no.
Del Curry on the back, I think.
Yeah, he managed to sort. I knew he was trying to source it. I can't remember that far back.
Yeah, he paid a lot of money for it for some.
I imagine he's got a few bob floating around.
Great troll. Quite so serious or whatever it was he had on the back of his hoodie in game 2.
Yeah, that was quite good. No, I want to see him in a Kawhi jersey. Or something like that.
I really like those stuff that makes me those OVO jumpers that they were giving out. I want one of them.
Did you see the? Sorry, we're getting distracted now.
Contact the Raptors and ask for all of their gear that they've given out for the final.
Yeah. Did you see they do the sort of the Raptors alumni bits?
Yeah, Vince Carter came out,
which is it's really cool.
Definitely.
But did you see how they introduced Matt Bonner? as being an honorary Canadian, and I sat there looking at him going, why is he an honorary Canadian and the other guys who played for this team not? And I've come to the conclusion,
part of the Commonwealth,
because he was wearing a plaid shirt. That's what you get when you're an honorary Canadian. They give you the lumberjack shirt.
You have just stereotyped an entire nation.
Me? Why would I do that? Why would I do that? But if anyone who is listening and is Canadian, please let us know if when you make someone an honorary Canadian, whether they have to have that
lumberjack
what
shirt.
Was it checked? Yeah, the plaid shirt, whatever you want to call
plaid.
it.
Is it plaid? It's not plaid.
I don't know. The lumberjack shirt. You know what I'm talking about.
Tune in next week for more fashion tips from Mike Moore.
Generally, just before we go, I think this final series has actually been a real breath of fresh air. We've needed this.
Yeah.
Yes.
For a while now. Like I know 2016 was great, but it really got boring after we'd seen Golden State and Cleveland going at it for 4 straight years. Like I know we had Spurs and Heat for what seemed was that 2 years in a row?
Two glorious years, yeah.
2 glorious years in a row, and both of those series were really great to watch. Whereas some of the Golden State Cleveland ones were just they were really dire.
Everybody always accuses the Spurs of being boring basketball, but you watch some of those series and even going back,
they played the most beautiful basketball.
Even going back
13
in those defensive years against Detroit and stuff like that. I know they were slugfests, but they
How
were
much more cheerful does Hugh
no,
sound?
we don't
now?
go back that far.
really good. They were really good series, man. I take them.
Take the silver and black goggles off. Anytime you mention slugfest, that's not a good series.
It was real basketball. That was when men were men.
Oh my god.
Dear.
Okay, I'll put you both on the spot then. Since 2000, what's your favourite final series?
Oh god.
It's probably going to be
3-1 was pretty epic.
Yeah, it's probably going to be 2014 for me.
That was the
That was the Kawhi Leonard MVP.
yeah.
Yeah, Spurs, beautiful basketball, just absolutely.
That was the aircon game.
Was that game 1 aircon game?
That was cranking up the aircon, wasn't it? That one?
Game 1, yeah.
Yeah, cramp game.
LeBron with the cramp game.
Cramp game.
LeBron cramp game.
I can't remember if it was the whole, because they're all blurring now. I can't remember in 13 whether it was just game 6.
13 was game 6 with the Bosch to
Was it
Allen
just that game
3.
that was good, or was the series good?
The series was alright.
The Spurs wins were pretty good.
The Spurs wins are
Not
pretty
biased
good.
at all.
No, not at all. Lakers falling to the Pistons was good.
That was a wonderful
love that
moment. Yeah, I was a big fan. That was 2003, 2004.
It was way back.
It was 2000.
It was the 04 Pistons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine would probably be 2011. Dirk
Yeah,
taking it to
Dirk
the king.
was great.
Yeah, that was good.
Because nobody expected that, and it was like, oh my god, why are the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals?
That Miami Heat Dallas Mavericks the first time around to 2006, I want to say. Was it?
When Dwayne Wade and Shaq.
That was a sneakily fun series, because remember that was when Dwayne Wade was really young, and it was like, can this dude handle the finals? And
4th year,
and he was incredible.
Yeah, well, and so finally a 2-guard upstage Shaq in a finals on his own team. That was not a slanderous remark about Kobe Bean Bryant, I promise.
I think we are very lucky as NBA fans, because I generally think that when there's a big game in the NBA, whether it's, opening night and it's Celtics Lakers, or you get to Christmas Day and you have the big games on Christmas Day, or you get to the playoffs and you have the matchups and the finals, like very rarely does one of the big matchups disappoint. Whereas football, and this isn't my basketball bias coming out, like a big game sometimes can be really boring in football. Whereas you just don't get that, and you don't get it. To be fair, you don't get it in rugby either. Usually rugby, there's something to laugh at. People hitting each other is fun.
But it's the same with American football. Like the Super Bowl every year is pretty boring. If you actually watch the gameplay, like I don't mind American football, but the Super Bowl kind of sucks usually, because it's usually the 2 best defensive teams that have made it there, and the 2 most, and led by quarterbacks who are generally great game managers, but they just wait until the final 2 minutes to actually make an offensive run, rather than scoring all their points in the first half, which is I'm going off on a tangent.
I just hear Mike's just giggling in the background as we're attacking all these other sports. But I do generally think it's a combination of the stars in the league and the moment. Like the NBA is a league that right now is loaded with stars, and those stars can have such a big impact on the game at that point.
Yeah.
Whereas in football, in other sports, it's a big team sport, so you can't tend to have that much of an impact. But if Kawhi Leonard wants to take over Game 5 of the NBA Finals, he can do. And yeah, I've really, really enjoyed watching this series. It's been fun.
Yeah, ditto.
Yeah.
Let's do it again on Friday.
We will do. We'll see if it goes 7.
Yeah.
Find out how many times we can talk about Quinn Cook and his ability to save the Warriors.
I look forward to it.
I think he's underrated.
He's really
he's getting
underrated.
paid this summer. He's getting paid this summer.
Oh yeah, he's going to get paid by someone. Yeah, he is solid. It's just who's going to have the better career, him or like J.R. Smith?
Oh wow.
How many rings has JR got? Just the one. How many rings has Quinn Cook got? And think of Quinn Cook's storyline as well. Like G League floating around, picked up, comes back in, had that Cinderella in Steph Curry's. Was it 2 seasons ago? Steph's injury, and he had that run where everyone was suddenly like, "This guy is a legitimate NBA star."
But remember, you forget the early J.R. Smith years though. Like people thought you could sort of almost build a franchise around him. He was a bit of a knucklehead, but he was. Those
two sentences should never follow each other.
What?
Like you could start a franchise around him, but he's a bit of a knucklehead. you should just delete the first part of that sentence. He's a bit of a knucklehead. Move on.
You're losing the plot.
he had a lot of talent.
He did have a lot of talent. So did Michael Beasley.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God! I can't believe
we
just ended a podcast on Michael Beasley. Anyway, folks, please, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please do leave us a review on iTunes. We really appreciate it. No, actually, don't leave a review on iTunes. iTunes is getting scrapped. Leave a review on the Apple podcast page. That's it.
Yeah.
Did you two know that iTunes is going?
Yeah.
This is all news to me.
Do you pay for music anymore?
No. I use a thing called Spotify.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I bought anything off iTunes, but yeah, iTunes is going, so it's now like the Apple Podcast Store or
so
something.
Where's all the stuff that you do buy off iTunes going to go?
The ether.
What? I'm getting my £1.98 back.
Mate, you're out of the loop. You need to get into it.
Oh God, get a bed, Grandad.
Napster lives forever.
Yeah, please review us on whatever platform it is you're listening to, and subscribe and tell your friends and share the love. If you're watching games, please use hashtag NBA in the UK on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We do see you. There were quite a few people up watching the game at 4 o'clock and 3 o'clock this morning, which was
real ones.
Yeah, which was impressive. Some of us have got work-life balance to worry about, which is a pain in the arse, but we get around it somehow. The website, as always, is doubleclutch.uk. Please go check it out. Loads of fantastic content on there, as we mentioned at the start of the show. I can't think of anything else. Hugh, is there any WNBA content to be looking forward to?
Yeah, there's some good stuff. I keep promising an article, but unfortunately the NBA playoffs the NBA finals have sort of taken over this past week, but I have got something in the pipeline based around the CBA negotiations, and in the meantime Josh has been keeping things ticking over with a great article about Liz Cambage and comparing her to Stone Cold Steve Austin's magnificent career. So go check that out.
Yeah, I can't stress enough. If you haven't got WNBA League Pass, do it. $16.99 for the whole season.
What?
Yeah.
It's nuts. Yeah. I actually messaged you and I went, am I reading this right? It's $16.99 for the whole season, not just like a month. And the season's what, like 3-4 months?
Yeah.
And when Hugh said, yep, I went, oh, okay, pay.
I generally didn't know that.
Yeah, get in.
Yeah, no, do it.
Come
get
on,
involved.
Matt, get involved.
It's not in terms of the facilities on the app. Oh god, here we go. It's not quite the same level as NBA League Pass, but it's got games on demand. You just can't download them the way. I haven't worked out how to do it yet, but you can mock me for that in a minute if there's a way.
When you watch them on the computer, you can actually watch games within games as well. So if you want to, if you were
WNBA Inception,
yeah, if you were on, if you were watching at lunchtime or wherever, or watching live games, then you can sort of do split screen, and I think you can watch up to 4 games at once on one screen. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
definitely do it.
The League Pass is amazing. They're always coming up with all kinds of new stuff, Coach Cam and things like that. Yeah. It's just you watch them and you're just like, this is cool. Don't know how it appeals to the hardcore, but I can see the hipster youth getting into it.
The people that don't use iTunes.
Yeah, on that note, check us out on Spotify, and we'll catch you. Well, we'll catch you very, very soon. But before then, Joe Holbert will probably catch you with the first of his draft pods. So we'll see you soon.
Peace.